Hi, this is Barry, and welcome to the Simplicity Zen podcast. Today, my guest is the Reverend Seiso Paul Cooper Roshi. He's the guiding teacher of the Two Rivers Zen Community and also for the Realizational Practice Studies Project. He is an ordained priest and received dharma transmission from Soto priest Sojun Diane Martin. Seiso is also a practicing psychoanalyst and is author of numerous books, including his most recent Psychoanalysis and Zen Buddhism, which was published March 1st of this year. Thanks so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Do you prefer Seiso or Paul?
Seiso is fine.
Okay, great. Um, so could you tell us about your two communities? You have the, sounds like a more traditional Soto Zen community and then the other one. Could you tell
I'll
us about
start with
the
that.
yeah.
We refer to ourselves as the Two Rivers Zen Community.
Mhm.
And I guess around 12 years ago, my wife and I moved to Honesdale, Pennsylvania, which is on the New York-Pennsylvania border in northeastern Pennsylvania. And I was practicing mostly on my own at that point, except that visiting Diane Martin's Udambara Sangha in Illinois for retreats every other month. And we, just coincidentally, I would say, we got a small group together. I was attending a book talk of a neighbor of mine that had written a book. He was a Catholic priest and who had left the order, and he had written a book called Good Church, Bad Church, good church being the parishioners and bad church being the hierarchy. And he's talking about it. And someone came up to me and said, do you practice Zen? And I said, what makes you ask? And she said, well, I could tell by the questions you raised and I said, you could tell, huh? You practice also? And she said, yeah. She said, where do you practice? I said, at my place. You care to join me? And it turned out she and two of her friends were practicing it at one of their homes.
Was this
And
prior or after dharma transmission?
this was before Dharma transmission.
Okay.
And so we all got together and started practicing. And then other people heard about it and started joining us as a really small sangha, but we decided to rent out a place and make a zendo. And over time, we moved across the river from Pennsylvania into Narrowsburg, New York, and organized Two Rivers Zen Community. Two Rivers because there's a convergence of two rivers right by us. So we wanted the name to reflect the environment. And we continued to practice. I continued to work on my priest ordination and transmission. And once that happened, we dedicated our space as a temple, which we called Bendo, a wholehearted practice temple,
Mm.
and continued until COVID hit. And then, as I mentioned to you before, we went online and
Mhm.
established a national practice group. We still call ourselves the Two Rivers Zen Community.
Mhm.
But then about a year and a half ago, I moved to Vermont. That's why I practice with folks up here from time to time. But I still guide the group, the Two Rivers group. And now I have a Dharma successor, and she'll take over for me
And
fairly
who is
soon.
that?
Miyoki Marsha Nehemiah, who is the person that came up to me during that book discussion to ask me
Okay.
if I practice Zen. And she's a very dedicated and sincere practitioner, and she's received uh, lay entrustment
Mhm.
from me about, I guess, about 2 years ago.
Mhm. In your
Um,
Realizational Practice Studies Project, how would you compare and contrast that to the Two
uh,
Rivers?
that's different because as a psychoanalyst, uh, me and a colleague of mine who's also a Buddhist practitioner and mostly in the Tibetan tradition, um, we're talking about how conferences on Buddhism and psychoanalysis typically don't have any practice or any experiential component to them.
Hmm.
So we decided to organize a retreat in the Soto Zen tradition uh, for psychotherapists, psychoanalysts, mental health professionals, and see how that would go. And it went really well. So we started having an annual retreat at the Garrison Institute. And over time, I started developing different programs. So, for example, on Wednesday evenings, we have an open study group, Zen and Psychoanalysis, where we'll read an article from the psychoanalytic literature that talks about Zen and psychoanalysis, or we'll read uh, an article from the Zen literature,
Hmm.
and we'll get together for a period of zazen, and then we'll have a period of time for discussion and seeing how the discussion relates to both Zen practice and to clinical work.
Do
And
you
so
have any touch points with Barry Magid? I know he's also interested in this.
um, Barry actually contributed an article to a book I edited years ago,
Hmm.
um, but no, he's not involved with us at all.
Hmm. So where I kind of detected East Coast accent. Did you grow up in New York area or
Brooklyn,
Brooklyn? Okay. Uh-huh.
yeah.
And could you kind of paint like a brief picture of kind of your childhood? Was it like working class? Was it religious? Kind of what was the vibe like around your childhood?
Well, I grew up in Brooklyn in a working slash middle class neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, my parents were not religiously oriented
Mm-hmm.
in terms of practice. Uh, my father's attitude was everybody's equal, and my mother's attitude was be nice. So that really stayed with me over the years. Um, I rejected any formal religion in the Catholic tradition after a while because something didn't feel right to me about it.
Mm-hmm.
Anti-Semitism and other kinds of attitudes that didn't sit right with me, didn't seem to equate with the teachings.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I guess it was around 1967, a friend of mine and I were going on an overnight hike upstate New York. And uh, his father had a room in their house that was his personal room, and it had wall to wall books. And he said, you can take any book you like on the hike to have something to read. So I took D.T. Suzuki's book, Essays in Zen Buddhism, first series, and started
But
to read it.
how did that stand out to you?
I didn't know what I was reading at the time.
But something made you grab it. Do you think it was?
Yeah, I was curious.
Uh-huh.
And
Had you heard of Zen at that point?
I've heard of Zen, yeah, but kind of in, offhanded ways, like
Like a beatnik
some,
way, kind
yeah, exactly.
of. Uh-huh.
And I had another friend whose older brother used to throw around expressions like, are those mountains magic or real?
Hmm.
Things like that. So I read the book, and then in the late 60s, with the psychedelic movement and everything, I started reading uh, more more literature. What was available at the time was Alan Watts's The Way of Zen, which I actually criticized pretty strongly in my last book. But
Hmm.
back then it was like awe-inspiring. because
Hmm.
I didn't know any better. And there wasn't anywhere to practice Zen at the time, and that I was aware of. And I was reading, the Tibetan Book of the Dead and the Tibetan Book of the Great Liberation. There's a Tibetan museum just across the river from us, from Brooklyn in Staten Island, and uh, it was a small private museum that was like really an exotic kind of setup. And my friends and I used to go there pretty often. I met a guy, his name was Rod Price, and he was involved in the Nyingma tradition of Tibetan Buddhism and would give talks on the wheel of life and death, the Bhava Chakra. And he and I would get into discussions. So things started moving forward that way.
Hmm.
Um,
Did you experiment with psychedelics at all?
mhm.
Yeah. Was it more recreational for you, or did you feel like you had any insight or?
I was looking for something.
Hmm.
Uh, the way I would conceptualize it now, not back then, is I was looking for a way to deal with my own dissatisfaction and suffering. I was pretty serious about it. But one day I thought to myself, well, according to these Buddhist teachings, I should be able to uh, induce these states of mind without drugs.
Hmm.
And I stopped. I stopped fooling around with psychedelics and started getting more interested in practice. But the practice I was doing was based on my own idea of how you practice from reading books. And then, Shunryu Suzuki's book came out, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and that was very comprehensible to me. And
Hmm.
what I would do is I take the book upstate. I had a place upstate for a while, like a weekend place. I take the book with me and uh, intersperse rounds of zazen with passages from the book, because you know how that book is set up. The sections are short,
Hmm.
so I would do that. Then I found out that there was a Zen center in New York City. It was established in the 70s, called the Zen Studies Society, that Ido Shimano Roshi had formed. And that was really the only game in town. So I used to go there to practice and study and get formal instructions, and continued there for on and off for many years.
What was your initial impressions of him, Edo Shibano?
At the time, I found him to be a very strong practitioner. Oh, I skipped this step. I started practicing and studying yoga
Hmm.
for a while, for quite a while. I actually became certified as a yoga teacher and used to teach yoga at the Integral Yoga Institute that Swami Satchidananda had founded.
And
And
that included a meditation.
yeah,
And
yeah,
what was that, like a mantra? What type of meditation
yeah, it
was
was
it?
mantra meditation. And I just, after a while, I couldn't relate to the whole thing, like uh, chants like, I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, immortal self I am. Things like that didn't equate with me, plus what I was reading in the Zen literature. So um, Shimano opened up a beautiful traditional monastery upstate New York called Dai Bosatsu Zendo. And I went up there for just for like an overnight trip, and got introduced to the whole situation, and a young monk gave me my first meditation instructions.
Hmm.
So after that, I started to attend retreats that Ido Shimano was conducting.
Sesshin.
Yeah, and I maybe once or twice a year, and got direct instructions from him. And over time, I shifted to Soto Zen.
Did you ever do Mu or any koans with?
Yeah,
Yeah. What was that like for you?
Uh, I had various takes on it at various times.
Hmm.
Uh, I thought it was a pretty strong practice, but it didn't. It didn't. Over time, it felt like a contradiction in the because I had mostly started studying Dogen's teachings,
Hmm.
and this idea of satori as a preferred state of mind uh, didn't equate with Dogen's idea that Zazen is an expression of our already enlightened nature, and it's constantly flowing and turning.
Hmm.
Um,
And so your developing Zen practice happened in parallel with your presumably undergraduate and graduate studies in psychology. Is that correct?
uh, well, actually, my undergraduate degree is in anthropology, cultural anthropology, uh,
Hmm.
and I had master's degrees, two master's degrees in special education and secondary education. Um, I entered psychoanalysis for the first, same reason I got involved in Zen was because I was suffering.
Hmm.
And the further I got into psychoanalysis, the analyst that I had, fortunately, was not critical of spiritual practices as many psychoanalysts at the time were. That's changed radically now. Um, and he actually encouraged me to pursue my Zen training.
Hmm.
And I left Daibosatsu Zendo because I didn't know anything about the controversies that were going on there. I left because I felt that they were neglectful. I ran into a period in my life where I was suffering from a serious asthmatic condition, and I contacted them and to ask them if they could, any way I could come to a session without having to sit in the hall with incense. They never bothered responding to me. So on a few occasions, I received no response. So I just started practicing elsewhere at the Zen Mountain Monastery in Mount Tremper. And
That's with Data Lori.
yeah,
What was your impressions of him?
oh, I liked him because he was many ways very down to earth. One of the reasons I used to go up there is because they had some primitive cabins in the woods near the monastery and near the temple. And my younger daughter was an infant at the time, so my wife and I could stay in the cabin, take turns watching my daughter, and freeing up one of us to go practice. And the folks up there were fine with that. And as my daughter started to develop into a toddler, she and Dido got into this really wonderful relationship together because she'd be outside the temple and he'd be pacing around smoking a cigarette or something, unfortunately, because I think that's what killed him.
Hmm.
Uh, and they'd start interacting like, oh, did you see the rabbit in the woods over there? That kind of thing. So I'll share this story. One day after lunch on a Sunday, after the Sunday service, after lunch, everybody would congregate outside the dining hall. And Dido and my daughter are crawling around on the ground following a caterpillar. So people started checking out what was going on and they're watching and watching, and he sensed it. So he turned around to my daughter and said, Erica, teach them something. So we used to sing the ABCs to her in the park on and swing her on the swing. And I guess that she internalized that. She started singing the ABC song to them, and everybody started singing. So, and that's how they were together when she would be up there with me.
Did you do koans with him or shikantaza?
Shikantaza.
Yeah.
I had
Um,
enough of koan with Mu.
mhm. Was he the first person who kind of gave you a formal introduction to shikantaza?
Let me think. Uh, no. I, I'm trying to think where I picked that up. I can't remember. Might have been from reading Shenru Suzuki.
Mhm. Do you remember what his instructions were with shikantaza? How to approach it?
Uh, he would say, just sit.
Hmm.
That's all he would say. And, you know, initially, if I was had excessive thoughts flowing around in my head, and if I said that to him, he'd just shrug his shoulders.
Hmm. So at
But
this
I
point, you've
also
been
had instructions in the Chan tradition of silent illumination, so that was pretty detailed. But that
that
was
Shin Chan or
uh, excuse me,
Is it Shin Chan? Was that the
uh,
Chan guy in New York? Was that his name?
Shang Yen,
Shang Yen. Sorry. Yeah.
Shang Yen.
So you met with him and practiced with him.
No, not with him, but with one of his senior students
I
up
see.
upstate New York, where they have a meditation center.
Hmm.
I would sit there with them from time to time to learn more about silent illumination.
So at this point, you'd been practicing Zen for a couple years. It sounds like.
Mhm.
What was keeping you? What was bringing you back? Were you seeing any changes in your life, or was it largely what you hoped would happen in the future? What was your relationship to Zen and how it was affecting your life at that point?
That's a good question, uh, because it's so fluid that there's times that I would get into this state of decisiveness that would come from a deeper place in me, uh, or a place of a different kind of insight. I guess we could call that intuition or intuitive wisdom. At some point, I started writing haiku and studying haiku and the other Japanese form that haiku came from, waka. And uh, I always had a musical instrument interest, so I started studying and playing the Japanese flute, the shakuhachi, as a form of practice also. So uh, I think I started quieting down
Hmm.
in terms of worrying about my life. I started, when I say more decisive, I got more active about my professional life. I'm more assertive about it.
Less fearful.
Yeah.
Um, so so at some point you were in the Pennsylvania New York border practicing largely on your own. How how did you met Diane, your Martin, your teacher?
Oh, that's a fun story. Um, someone was organizing a conference on Buddhism and psychoanalysis. Someone that actually lives up here in Vermont, uh, and the conference was going to take place in Santa Monica, California. And what they did was set up this sort of dating game kind of thing where they put the biographies of all of the people that would be presenting on a website, and you would check them out and friend someone. And what she was trying to do was to match a, a Buddhist teacher with a psychotherapist, and then the two would work together to present something. And so Diane and I both picked each other, and we started talking on the telephone.
Analyst too, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
she was originally a Jungian analyst and became did more studying to become what we call object relations uh, theory and a practitioner of object relations. So she's a really brilliant person and I had a wide background. So anyway, we started talking on the phone every week and came to the conclusion that we would just continue the dialogue because it was very exciting and mutually rewarding. And we'd just continue the same dialogue and invite other people, the group, whoever the participants at the conference were, into it. Anyway, the conference, I could say more about that, but basically, in the interest of time, the conference was canceled. It seems that the registration wasn't high
Okay.
enough, but many of us had non-refundable airplane tickets and hotel reservations and that sort of thing. And so I contacted uh, one of the folks that was running a place in Santa Monica, a mindfulness and psychotherapy center. So, and she and her husband were involved with the Los Angeles Zen Center, and her husband was uh, transmitted by Maizumi Roshi, and she said, "Well, we could host you here," and you know, we continued talking, and I found about a group of other people that also had tickets and were willing, plane tickets and stuff, and were willing to come to the to do this. And our attitude at the time was, well, traditional conferences, so a few talking heads, if you will, and everybody else listens, and there's no time for a real dialogue. And at this point, this was in 2009, we felt there were enough folks in the Buddhist and psychoanalytic uh, dialogue or practicing or integrating the two in some way or another, that there'd be a lot of folks besides the panelists that might have something to say and wouldn't have time to say it. So a colleague of mine, Mel Miller, who's also a psychoanalyst and a Zen practitioner, um, devised a different kind of conference where we would have two people do the dialogues because they were already set up that way, and invite people into a discussion. Uh, we'd limit the dialogue to 10 or 15 minutes and then set, have the folks doing the dialogue start to invite people into the conversation if they wanted to. And then in between these setups, these sessions, we'd have a period of meditation. And I invited people from different traditions, the Theravada, Zen, Tibetan tradition, and I did a meditation called Sui Zen, which is a shakuhachi flute meditation. And we would have a round of meditation in between each dialoguing period. And so we did that. And Diane and I continued our conversation. And she said, I'd like to offer myself to you as a teacher. And I said, well, I had that fantasy too, but you're all the way out in Illinois. Well, she said, well, why don't you just hop on a plane next time we have a weekend session and come on out? So I did.
And you guys had never met yet.
Not in
Oh, you
person.
met at the conference, right? Or
Yeah, that's
the
how we
placement
met
conference. Yeah.
at the conference. But we
Right.
had been talking on the phone.
Hmm.
So I said, I did it. And her Sangha was in Evanston, Illinois at the time, a very welcoming group of people. But like one of the ways that I was greeted and welcomed in was that she set me up in the Dokusan room to be able to have a brief interview, kind of a meet and greet kind of thing with any of the Sangha members who wanted to meet me. And everybody did. So it was really nice. When I used to sit up at some of these other retreats, the you'd sit next to someone for 8 days and you wouldn't even know the name.
It's true. Or even talk to them.
So this was very refreshing to me. So I started studying with her. She asked me, "Do you want to study to be a priest, or a lay teacher, or both, or a teacher, or transmitted teacher, or both?" So when she explained the differences and the processes and everything, I said, "I'll just go for the whole deal."
I'm curious, real briefly, how did she compare and contrast being a lay teacher versus being a transmitted teacher?
Well, I think the contrast was more about being a priest than being a teacher, where that an ordained priest would conduct certain ceremonies, weddings, funerals, etc., that a lay teacher wouldn't, and that a transmitted teacher would have the ability to perform jukai and transmit lay teachers or whatever. Since I didn't have my own center was not a monastery or anything, I didn't have any monks in our Sangha. So we have 2 lay teachers now. One's a Dharma heir.
A quick digression about that. In the Suzuki Roshi lineage, it seems pretty set that Dharma trusted teachers, lay teachers, are their lineage dead ends. They're not empowered to pass on the lineage in any fashion. How does it work in your guys' lineage? Would you be comfortable with one of your lay entrusted or lay transmitted teachers passing on the lineage?
I would be comfortable, yeah. And yeah, that's the Suzuki lineage. My own heritage is in the Katagiri lineage, and I don't know how they think about that because I never met him or anything. Diane's attitude is more, could say, more open, more all-inclusive. There's been, as you know, there's been talk about differences between monastics and lay folks, and I don't think internally the differences are that significant.
How do you feel about wearing the robes in the ceremonies and and being doshi and bowing? Is it something you kind of put up with for the forums, or is it something that really resonates with you?
Oh, it resonates with me because it's become a practice of putting the robes on properly and making the appropriate moves as doshi and things like that. So it really escalated my practice. However, since the COVID, I haven't actually worn my robes. There's just no reason to. I mean, sometimes I would on the Zoom format for Sunday practice because we have a little minimal service. But after a while, I guess I just didn't see any need for it.
Do you so you presumably you took Jukai with Diane, is that correct?
No, actually, I took Jukai with Aido Shimano.
Oh, you did? I didn't realize that.
And though Diane said Jukai wouldn't be required for me, and I wouldn't have to sew a new rakusu, I decided to do that anyway.
So did you sew a black one for your ordination?
Yeah. Yeah, and a brown one for my transmission.
Did you sew a case as well?
Yep, 2 of them, and 2. So
was that hard being remote, not having a local teacher, or is there someone around?
No, I don't know if you know Karen Wyken. She's in Wisconsin. and she's a wonderful teacher, sewing teacher. And what we would do is she'd send me the materials in the mail, priority mail, and I would just do some sewing and send them back to her, and she would send me the next step, tell me with instructions and everything. And if I did something wrong, she would tell me and have me fix it, or sometimes she'd fix it herself.
How long was that process? Years?
No,
No.
I really got into the sewing.
Uh-huh.
It's probably more like months
Oh,
for the occasion.
cool. It's cool that it worked so efficiently and remotely like that.
Yeah, it was just really a nice break from everything to have that kind of a practice where I would just sit and sew. And but I keep telling, I have some students in Jukai training now, and they'll receive Jukai in October. And the process has been going on for about a year and a half now. And I keep telling them, folks that are hesitant to sew, if I could sew 2 ocases and 2 rakusus in that short amount of time, you shouldn't have any problem sewing 1 rakusu.
Right.
Oh, let me share this with you because it's close to my heart.
Okay.
As I mentioned, my first real introduction to Zen practice was at Daibosatsu Zendo.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we've come out of COVID, I formed a committee to find a place for us to have an in-person sesshin. And the committee looked around, and they came up with Daibosatsu Zendo. So we're going to have our sesshin there on the weekend of October 13th and 15th, where I received Jukai, and I'll be transmitting Jukai to anyone who's completed the requirements.
Mm-hmm. So it's come full circle for you.
Yeah, and that's what I'm calling it, Enzo Full Circle Sesshin.
Oh, you didn't just. I want to say for the record, you didn't pay me to set that up.
and it's kind of nice. Ido Shimano was a great calligrapher. Despite all his problems and everything, he was years ago I purchased an Enso that he got into a space where he did a series of Enso. So I have one. I still have it. So I think I'm going to bring that with me.
Mm-hmm. So I want to get into your Zen and psychoanalysis stuff. I have 2 quick questions about your priest training before we go into that. One is, did Diane have any sort of curriculum for you? Like what? At the point it became clear you were working explicitly towards ordination and transmission. What was it? What was it? Just bringing your practice to her and seeing what came up, or did she have a specific stuff she wanted you to learn? Or
what she's done with all of our students in that track is to focus on something that was important to them and to really cultivate it and take it as far as one could. Mm-hmm. So I was interested in Dogen. So we focused on Dogen.
Mm-hmm. And were there expectations of priestcraft? You knew how to do doshi from memory and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like if you memorized all the classic Soto sutras and so forth.
No.
Or chants. Not the Soul Sutras, but the chants, I'm just curious.
Yeah. When I lived in Pennsylvania, the nearest priest was 2 hours away, and that was Diane Benaj Roshi from Mount Equity. And we got friendly, and I used to go practice with her also. And she was very insistent. Once you know the chant by heart, it'll take on a different effect. So I took her seriously about that. The other training I received was uh, Grace Shearson was running uh, a retreat center for priest training. So when we had to do the, uh, the monastic residency, uh, I was able to do it with her in California. She's since retired, and we spent quite a bit of time on designing rituals that would be relevant to the community where we were teaching.
Mhm.
And,
Did you do a shusho ceremony there, or was that your susho time?
No, that was with Diane.
Okay. And so with Grace, did you do a full ongo practice period?
Yeah.
Okay. Mhm. Okay. Last question about the priest training. So when it came for Dharma transmission, and I'm purely asking just this out of just being a Zen geek. I'm really interested in the different traditions. When you guys did the Dharma transmission, was it in the classic Soto style where it was just you two at night over multiple days, or do you guys have a different approach?
It was private.
Hmm.
It wasn't over multiple days though, because Diane came out to Pennsylvania to Zendo, and we set up a private room for her and I to uh, uh, for me to receive the transmission.
Hmm.
But we had the whole sangha there and friends.
For the ceremony.
No, for a party afterwards.
Okay. And did you have to do a lot of copying of
Yeah.
documents and stuff? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
I have a couple of lineage charts in
Mhm.
rolled up in tubes in my closet.
Mhm. All right. So moving on, I'd like to talk to you about kind of the topics of your books and stuff. So at a really high level, how would you compare and contrast Zen practice and psychoanalysis? Like, how do they differ? What are the touch points? Are they on a different spectrum entirely? Are they congruent with each other? How would you characterize this?
Um, I'm going to condense it into 4 points.
Okay.
Um, there's many different theories in psychoanalysis, just as there are many different Buddhisms, and many of the theories are contradictory. I resonated with theories that were related, had a resonance with Zen. So I would find identities, similarities, and differences.
Hmm.
And they're all important. The identities are important, the similarities are important, the differences are very important. So the what I broke it down to is these points. First of all, it's subjective, and both practices are subjective and highly experiential. So there's a, a strong emphasis on the present moment.
Hmm.
There's a strong emphasis on not knowing.
Really, even in psychoanalysis,
Yeah,
or
from this.
in that type.
Well, the psychoanalyst that I draw from primarily, Wilfred Bion, is a British object relations theorist, uh, once said, if the patient you're seeing today, if you think it's the same patient you saw yesterday, that's the wrong patient.
Hmm.
So, uh, so I mentioned not knowing, emphasis on the present moment, um, a balance between intuition and cognition, and a shift from static states of mind to fluid and flexible actions and relationships.
Hmm.
So everything comes out of that, out of those points.
Hmm. So in Zen, those characteristics often flow. You don't even have to have the intention or the aspiration for those. And a lot of times, just the practice of Zazen will kind of have those elements as fruition. Would you agree with that premise?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that's how I identified them through, they would spontaneously emerge through practice and study.
So how does that work in psychoanalysis then when you don't have the essential the mind training of Zazen? Do you get to it
Well,
through
we
it?
do have the mind training. I think that's a misunderstanding.
Okay.
Some of the mindfulness folks have said Freud said we should practice evenly hovering attention, but he never told us how, and mindfulness could fill that in. But I don't
Hmm.
see it that way. It's our personal analysis that frees us up from our
Hmm.
own blind spots.
Hmm.
Uh, and it raises another kind of question. Dogen doesn't distinguish between so-called positive and negative mental states in terms of trying to get rid of the negative and cultivating the positive. He says, sit in a balanced, neutral place with the rising and falling of all phenomena.
Hmm.
Um, so we learn to do that through our psychoanalytic practice and through our Zen practice. Um, but the idea here is that the idea that mindfulness can strengthen attention uh, idealizes or overvalues states of attention and devalues and minimizes states of inattention,
Hmm.
which could be very valuable sources of information. Like,
Hmm.
why am I not attentive to this person at this time right now? What does it tell me about their inner life?
Hmm. So how do you think so in the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha basically says, if I could paraphrase a little bit, that people suffer because of they don't get what they want, or they don't want to be in a current state, or they want to be in a current state, or their expectations are dashed. That's kind of the first noble truth. Is there a parallel in psychoanalysis where, like, is it the same paradigm?
Well, it's a similar paradigm because, as you know, that idea comes out of the hub of the wheel of life and death. That ignorance creates duality, and duality creates love and hate, or attachment and aversion, however you want to describe them. And Freud's basic principles were also about libidinal drives or erotic drives and aggressive drives.
Hmm.
And Melanie Klein later turned that into humanize them by talking about love and hate. So it's all there. That's a link. Now, one difference is that if I bring the notion of mushotoku, a no gaining mind, that I'm not trying to accomplish anything with the patient to maintain a sense of openness to their experience in the present moment, that doesn't mean the patient has to have that attitude. Of course, he and she or she has goals. They're
Hmm.
suffering, or they wouldn't have come to psychoanalysis. It's a big endeavor. So um, they have a goal of wanting to get rid of something or to gain something. And so that's their right and their privilege.
Hmm.
I'm not going to impose or try not to impose my my values or ideas on the patient.
Hmm. Um, do you see Zen as a healing modality? Because obviously, on some levels, no gaining mind is kind of the opposite in some ways of
Well,
healing. It's
you
accepting
have to
as what is.
remember the Buddha. The Buddha was described as the medicine man or the great healer.
Hmm.
So Zen, following in the traditional Buddhist footsteps, we could say is a healing modality. But the healing comes through mushotoku.
Hmm.
If you let what rises and falls in zazen rise and fall, uh, even the most uh, disturbing thoughts and feelings that come up will soften after a while.
Hmm.
It's when you fight with them that they take on more energy and more power. more hold on us.
Mm-hmm.
I often use the image of, remember they used to make these woven bamboo tubes that you stick your fingers in, and if you try to pull it
Right.
tight,
Uh-huh.
Chinese handcuffs, I think they were
Yeah,
called.
I've used that same analogy. Like that.
So you know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
Um, so you have a series of talks on one of your websites about living samadhi. Sorry, could you define that and talk about in general, like what type of samadhi you're talking about and what role you think samadhi plays in Zen practice?
To me, it's the practice of sitting with whatever arises and falls without attachment or aversion or judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the activity of sitting. At least that's how I see it.
Mm-hmm. And so let's say you're driving down the road and someone flips you off and cuts in front of you. How do you bring that mind into that moment, or can you bring that mind into moment? Is it something that has to arise spontaneously through long years of practice?
I think that's correct. Our habit formations are so ingrained that I probably immediately get angry and start cursing or something.
Mm-hmm.
But over time, my response might shift. I might start laughing and saying, "Oh, that guy's in a hurry. He thinks he's on the Indianapolis 500." Well, our response, I think, our response to things gradually shifts. I've noticed that in my own practice when something toxic comes up. So the idea is just keep practicing no matter what, and
Mm-hmm.
then uh, uh, gradually over time, can we bring the practice off the cushion and let it generalize into our everyday life
Mm-hmm.
where it really counts?
Mm-hmm. So I know you need to go soon. So I kind of like to ask you one last question. Maybe we'll have time for more, but at least this one. So you've given transmission to some students. Um, I'm curious, what do you see as what criteria are you looking for in a human to that you think that they are, I don't know if qualified is the right word, but you know, in a good position to carry on this tradition? Like what are you looking for? Like what kind of fruitions of practice?
Oh, well, let me clarify something. I said two transmitted teachers in our Sangha, but one
Mhm.
was transmitted by Diane Roshi.
Oh, okay.
The That's why I refer to one as a Dharma heir. And this is a person who's very dedicated to practice and study,
Hmm.
very willing to step forward when the need arises,
Hmm.
very humble about her capabilities, very steady and consistent, um, uh, good heart, um, good boundaries.
Hmm. So, in a lot of ways, bodhisattva activity.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Great.
definitely.
Hmm. Cool. Well, I know you need to go. So there's actually many other things I hope to talk to you about. Maybe we could have a part two for
Sure,
tomorrow. Okay,
sure. It's
great.
just my schedule's a little tight this week because
Yeah, no
we're
problem.
going out to Illinois on Friday.
Okay, cool. Yeah, all right. Yeah, so before we go, can you, people who are might be interested in either of your communities, the more traditional Soto one or the psychoanalyst focus one, what would be the best ways for them to reach out to you?
They could pop me an email personally. I'm really good at getting back to emails, or they
Okay.
can go to either of the websites and see what we have to offer.
I won't put it in writing because I don't want you to get spam, but could you say your email? Spell it out? Or
Uh, Chugai108 at gmail.com, and Chugai is spelled Chugai, chugai108
What does that mean?
Chugai was my Jukai name,
Oh, okay.
and it means transcending universe.
And then you got a new name with your ordination.
Yeah, Seiso, which means whole expression, spontaneously arising whole expression.
Mhm.
We used to joke about Chugai as, oh, you mean spaced out. So
All right.
it's all in there.
Okay.
It's all in
Well,
good fun.
yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You
Okay. I
too.
look forward to having you back on and continuing the discussion.
Sure.
Okay.
We'll
Have a
stay in
great day.
touch
Thank you.
and take care.
You too.